Russia just bombed Ukraine into the ground overnight. Not a skirmish, not a probe, not a harassment run with a handful of cheap drones to see what Ukraine can handle on a Tuesday night. A full-scale, coordinated, multi-front assault on the capital city of Kyiv, and it is one of the most devastating, most calculated, most overwhelming attacks we have witnessed in over 4 years of this war. 8 Zircon hypersonic cruise missiles, 33 Iskander ballistic missiles, 27 Kh-101 air-launched cruise missiles, 5 Caliber cruise missiles, and 656 attack drones launched simultaneously from every direction at once, designed with one purpose: to overwhelm, saturate, and destroy. The footage coming out of Ukraine right now looks like something out of a nightmare that never quite ends. Buildings exploding, fires ripping through city blocks, smoke rising over the Kyiv skyline at 3 in the morning while millions of people tried to survive the night. And while all of this was happening, while Russian missiles were still in the air over a European capital city, NATO was scrambling fighter jets, Poland was moving to maximum military readiness, and somewhere in Washington, American officials were quietly, confidentially, having the most consequential and dangerous conversation that exists in modern international security: whether to move American nuclear weapons deeper into Eastern Europe, closer to Russia's front door than they have been at any point in decades. This is Russia's catastrophic overnight attack on Ukraine. This is what is actually happening. And we are not going to pretend otherwise. If you are not subscribed to this channel, do it right now. Hit the like button, turn on all notifications, every single one of them, because this story is moving fast and the people who should be informing you about it are too busy trying not to panic anyone. Not here. We tell you what is real. The weapons themselves demand serious attention, because the sheer scale and calculated sophistication of what Russia deployed last night is not something you can dismiss as routine escalation. It requires real scrutiny, not a casualty count scrolling across the bottom of a cable news screen. Understanding what was fired at Ukraine overnight means understanding what Russia is actually capable of, what it is actually willing to do, and what the international community is genuinely dealing with as this war pushes past 4 years and shows no sign of winding down. Start with the 8 Zircon hypersonic cruise missiles, because the Zircon is not a conventional weapon. By any reasonable standard, it travels at approximately Mach 99 times the speed of sound, from the moment it is detected to the moment it hits its target. The window for interception is measured not in minutes but in seconds that no air defense system was originally designed to handle. The Zircon was built from the ground up to evade interception. It flies at altitudes and velocities that challenge even the most advanced radar tracking, and once it is incoming, there is almost nothing short of a Patriot battery with near-perfect positioning that gives you even a fighting chance of stopping it. Russia launching 8 of those in a single night is not restraint. It is not a warning shot. It is the deployment of overwhelming firepower against a civilian capital with total disregard for any international norm that is supposed to make targeting populated cities off limits. Then there are the 33 Iskander short-range ballistic missiles, and the Iskander deserves its own conversation. This is one of the most accurate, most battle-proven weapons in Russia's conventional arsenal. Its circular error probable, the technical measurement of accuracy, is just a few meters. A few meters. It can level a city block with one hit. And critically, the Iskander is a dual-capable system. That means it is designed and certified to carry either conventional or nuclear payloads. I want to be absolutely clear, there is no indication Russia used nuclear warheads last night. But the fact that 33 Iskander missiles were fired at a European capital in a single night is not a detail you walk past without pausing. This is a weapon on the short list of systems Russia can use to deliver nuclear strikes, and it was fired 33 times in the dark over Kyiv. Then came the 27 Kh-101 air-launched cruise missiles, weapons fired not from aircraft over Ukraine but from Russian strategic bombers flying hundreds of miles away, well beyond the reach of Ukrainian air defenses, each one a long-range, radar-evading precision cruise missile specifically engineered to defeat early warning systems. 5 Caliber cruise missiles, ship or submarine-launched, naval precision weapons that demonstrate the reach and variety of Russia's strike capability, and then the drones, 656 of them. You have to understand what happens when you combine all of these systems in a single coordinated assault. The drones come in waves, forcing Ukrainian air defense batteries to expend interceptors at an alarming rate against cheap, expendable targets, and once those defenses are taxed, burning through their inventory, running toward empty, the expensive, hard-to-kill hypersonics and ballistic missiles come screaming in against degraded defenses. This is not random. This is not rage. This is a deliberate engineered saturation strategy, and it worked exactly as designed, because Ukraine does not have an unlimited supply of interceptors, and every drone they shoot down is another missile they cannot quickly or cheaply replace. The footage that has come out of Kyiv in the hours since this attack began is, and I will not dress this up for anyone's comfort, horrifying in the full meaning of that word. You can watch direct missile impacts in real time. You can hear the concussive force of explosions cutting through a city at night. You can see Kh-101 cruise missiles coming in low over neighborhoods, homes, apartment complexes, streets where people live and hitting their targets while cameras roll. Buildings that had people inside them before midnight are crumbling on video. Cars are burning in streets. Smoke is rising in columns over the Kyiv skyline in footage that Volodymyr Zelensky himself released to show the world what his people endured last night. There is footage of a successful Patriot surface-to-air missile intercept a Russian Iskander ballistic missile carrying cluster submunitions caught in the sky and destroyed. And that footage gets reported with words like successful and intercept, and both of those words are technically accurate, but they leave out a critical detail that changes everything. When you intercept a ballistic missile carrying submunitions at altitude, those submunitions do not disappear in a flash and vanish. They continue to fall over the city, over the neighborhoods directly below the intercept point, over streets and sidewalks and parks. The debris field from a high-altitude intercept of a munition carrier can spread across an enormous ground area, and every fragment that rains down is a live, lethal hazard to anyone below. A successful interception is simultaneously a real tragedy for anyone on the ground who happens to be standing in the wrong street when the sky starts raining metal. Ukraine's air defense situation is serious right now. They are fighting with a finite number of interceptors, with constrained resupply, with an enemy that has deliberately engineered a strike package designed to drain those defenses faster than they can be replenished. There is also footage of a Ukrainian Air Force F-16 shooting down a Kh-101 cruise missile, and I genuinely want to acknowledge what that represents. A Ukrainian pilot, flying an American-supplied fighter jet, intercepts and kills an incoming Russian cruise missile over his own capital city in the middle of the night. That is one of the defining military images of this entire war. But one F-16 shooting down one missile does not change the mathematics of 656 drones and 8 hypersonic weapons launched simultaneously. The arithmetic of this assault was not on Ukraine's side, and every piece of footage coming out of the aftermath proves it. While Russian missiles were still falling on Kyiv, while fires were burning and sirens were wailing and Ukrainian families were sheltering wherever they could find cover, something else was happening that the Western press did not cover with anywhere near the intensity it deserved, and I want to make sure you understand exactly how significant it is. Poland, a full NATO member state, a country with a mutual defense commitment backed by every nation in the alliance, including the United States, scrambled fighter jets, not as a precaution, not as a routine exercise, not as a slow, bureaucratic decision made after morning coffee and a committee vote. As a direct emergency response to an active, large-scale Russian assault happening in real time on Poland's immediate neighbor, Polish armed forces announced the full activation of fighter jets, command and control aircraft, ground-based air defense systems, and radar reconnaissance networks, all brought simultaneously to maximum readiness. All of it because Russian weapons were in the air and the trajectory of every single one of them could not be guaranteed with absolute certainty, and that uncertainty is not theoretical anymore. Just days before this attack, a Russian one-way attack drone struck Romania. Romania, a NATO member state, let that register for a moment. A weapon launched by the Russian military made impact on the sovereign territory of a country covered by Article 5 of the NATO Charter, the collective defense clause that every member state signed, the promise that says an attack on one is an attack on all, and the response to that incident was deliberate, careful, cautious, which, to be fair, reflects mature statecraft in a dangerous situation, but it also sends a signal that Russia is clearly reading. Here we are, days after a Russian drone hit NATO territory, and we are watching the largest missile attack on Ukraine's capital in recent memory, with Poland on maximum alert and NATO jets airborne over European airspace in the middle of the night. At what point does a pattern of Russian aggression that has already crossed a NATO border constitute a threshold that demands a clear, public, unambiguous response from the alliance? What is the threshold? Who sets it? Who makes the call? And what does it do to the credibility of Article 5, the entire foundation of collective defense, when the answer to those questions remains deliberately, nervously undefined? These are not academic questions reserved for seminars at think tanks in Brussels. These are the most pressing, most urgent questions in European security right now, and the people in charge owe the public direct answers. Subscribe to this channel right now if you are not already. Share this video because this conversation is not happening loudly enough anywhere else, and tell me in the comments below, where do you think the line is, and what happens when Russia crosses it? And now we get to the part of this story that, in my honest assessment, carries the most serious long-term consequences of anything that happened last night, more than the Zircon missiles, more than the drone footage, more than Poland's jets in the air, because while Russian weapons were raining down on a European capital, the United States of America was reportedly deep in classified discussions about deploying American nuclear weapons to Eastern Europe, according to reporting from the Financial Times, and this is sourced to 3 people directly briefed on the discussions. The United States is in active talks with several NATO allies, including Poland and the Baltic states, about whether to expand the forward deployment of American nuclear-capable aircraft to countries far closer to Russia's western border than anything currently in place. Right now, American dual-capable aircraft, meaning aircraft certified and configured to deliver nuclear weapons, are stationed in 6 countries: Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Turkey, and the United Kingdom. These are F-15 Strike Eagles and F-35 Lightning Eyes, built and qualified to carry nuclear payloads. The proposal, reportedly under discussion, would extend that arrangement to Poland and the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, nations that not only share a direct border with Russia but, in Lithuania's case, share a border with Kaliningrad, the Russian military exclave wedged between Poland and Lithuania on the Baltic Sea. The stated rationale for this potential expansion, as described in the reporting, is deterrence and reassurance. The logic goes, as the United States has reduced its conventional military footprint on the European continent, nuclear sharing becomes a critical mechanism for signaling to NATO allies that the security guarantee is real, that American commitment to European defense is not diminishing, and that Russia should not mistake any reduction in conventional forces for a softening of resolve, that logic is not irrational. Deterrence theory has a serious intellectual foundation. Nuclear weapons in Europe have existed since the Cold War, specifically because strategists believed, and most still believe, that their presence made large-scale conventional war less likely by raising the potential cost of any aggressive miscalculation to an intolerable level. But that entire framework is being stress-tested in real time right now. And here is the question that deterrence theory cannot cleanly answer. How does Russia interpret the forward deployment of American nuclear-capable aircraft to Poland and the Baltics when it is happening in the context of an ongoing war that Russia is actively prosecuting? At what point does a step that is intended as deterrence get perceived by the other side as preparation for something more aggressive? Who controls that interpretation? And what happens if Russia responds to nuclear redeployment with nuclear redeployment of its own, moving tactical nuclear weapons closer to the Western Front, in Kaliningrad, in Belarus, in forward positions along the Ukrainian border? Has anyone in Washington publicly, clearly, honestly walked through the escalation ladder of what comes next? Because I have been covering this conflict with serious attention, and I have not heard that conversation happen at any level of public accountability. Here is what I want you to sit with for a few minutes, because I think it is the part of this story that gets lost in the geopolitical framing, in the maps and the weapon system names and the alliance structure briefings. The United States has committed over $170 billion to Ukraine and to the broader response to Russia's invasion since February 2022, $170 billion of American money over more than 4 years. I want to be direct about something. I am not making the argument that supporting Ukraine is wrong. That is a separate conversation with serious arguments on multiple sides. What I am arguing, what I think any honest journalist has an obligation to argue, is that the American people have never been given a clear, honest public accounting of what that investment is intended to achieve, what the definition of success looks like, and what the exit condition is. What is the endgame? Has any American president, any Secretary of Defense, any Secretary of State, any national security advisor stood in front of a camera and plainly said, "Here is what we are trying to accomplish. Here is how we will know when we have accomplished it. Here is the condition under which this commitment ends"? If that statement has been made with specificity and clarity, somebody point me to it, because I have been looking. What we have gotten instead is strategic ambiguity, a phrase that sounds like sophisticated statecraft but functions, in practice, as a shield against accountability. If you never define the goal, you can never be held responsible for failing to reach it. You can simply continue managing the situation indefinitely while the bills pile up and the body count climbs and the American taxpayers whose money is funding all of it go about their lives without a real explanation of what they are paying for. Meanwhile, we are now hearing that American nuclear weapons could be repositioned to Eastern Europe, two countries with American service members already stationed on their soil in the most significant nuclear posture shift in Europe in decades, and this decision, according to the Financial Times, is being made in highly confidential discussions without a public debate, without a congressional authorization vote, without anyone standing in front of the American people and saying, "This is what we are doing, this is why we believe it is the right call, and this is what we will do if it provokes a response." The men and women who would be stationed alongside those weapons in Poland and the Baltic states are Americans. They are somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's parent. They are not a classified footnote. They are not a line item in a defense appropriation. They deserve a government that is honest about the risks it is asking them to take in the name of national security, and right now that honesty is not being delivered.